The 7 levels of Negan's brutality, from human to monster. Most villains you understand immediately. They want power, they want revenge, the motivation is obvious. Negan is different, and the reason people are still arguing about this character years later isn't because he's mysterious. It's because if you're being honest with yourself, you can follow the logic of almost every decision he ever made. That's what makes him dangerous. Today, we're breaking down 7 levels. From a guy you might have actually liked, to the man who made a room full of survivors kneel in the dirt and felt nothing but satisfaction doing it. By level 7, the thing that disturbs you most won't be what he did, it'll be how well you understand why. Let's go. Level 1. The man before the monster. Before the apocalypse, Negan was a high school gym teacher. Loud, charismatic, funny in that sharp, uncomfortable way. But the warning signs were already there long before the first walker showed up. He cheated on his wife while she was battling cancer. He lost his job after a violent incident. He pushed every limit he encountered not because he was stupid, but because he genuinely believed consequences didn't apply to him the way they applied to everyone else. In the old world that got him in trouble, those consequences acted like a cage, not one that made him better, just one that kept the worst of him contained. Then the apocalypse came, and the cage door swung open. But at level 1, Negan still had guilt, still had grief, still had genuine human feeling. Which makes everything that comes next more terrifying, not less. Level 2. Survival over morality. In the early days, Negan was doing exactly what everyone else was doing, trying not to die. He stole when he needed to, intimidated when persuasion was too slow, made the calculation that some people were more valuable alive than others. Rick did this, Daryl did this, Carol definitely did this. The difference wasn't what Negan did. It was the story he told himself about why. Most survivors carry the weight of those decisions. They make the hard call, and then question themselves at night. Negan didn't. He got extraordinarily good at one specific lie. I'm not cruel, I'm just realistic. Everyone judging me is too weak to survive what I've survived. And once you fully believe that story about yourself, you've given yourself permission. Permission that once granted is almost impossible to take back. Level 3. The first kill. We never get a flashback of Negan's first intentional kill. But we know what it meant to him because of everything that followed. What he discovered wasn't just that he could kill. He discovered violence was a shortcut. Negotiation takes time. Building trust takes time. But fear is instant. One violent act carried out clearly and without hesitation tells 100 people everything they need to know. And the terrifying thing is that logic isn't entirely wrong. In the early apocalypse, it worked. People listened. People cooperated. But here's what Negan failed to account for. When you build authority entirely on fear, you have to keep feeding it. Because fear fades. And the moment people stop flinching, you've lost everything. He'd learn that lesson eventually. Just not before doing an enormous amount of damage. Level 4. Building the saviors. Most people look at the saviors and think gang. Violent thugs following a violent leader. But that's not what they were. The saviors were a system, and Negan was the architect. Organized supply chains, a points-based economy, clear rules, brutal yes, but consistent and predictable. A chain of command across multiple territories. This wasn't chaos in a leather jacket. This was governance. And the punishments weren't random cruelty either. The iron branding was theater. Public punishment was policy. Negan had figured out something rulers throughout history have always understood. People can tolerate almost anything if it's predictable. Give people rules, even terrible ones, and they build their lives around surviving within them. But to make the system feel permanent, he needed examples. Visible, unforgettable ones. And so the man who started out just trying to survive was now engineering suffering as a management strategy. Level 5. Psychological warfare. By level 5, Negan had moved beyond physical dominance because physical dominance has limits. You can only be in one place at one time. But psychological control scales. He showed up just often enough to remind everyone what resistance looked like. Took exactly enough, half their supplies, to keep communities dependent without destroying them completely. And then the most insidious move, he made them grateful for it. Convinced entire communities that submission was actually safety. that the cage was a shelter, that they needed him. People believed it not because they were stupid, but because when you're exhausted and scared, the idea that someone else is in control can feel like a relief. That's what psychological warfare really is. Not making people afraid of you, but making people unable to imagine a world without you. One group kept looking at the cage and seeing a cage. So Negan decided to send a message no one would ever forget. Level 6, The Lineup, Season 7. Episode 1. The most disturbing premiere the show ever aired, and most people focus on the deaths and completely miss the design. Negan didn't just kill Glenn and Abraham that night. He choreographed every single second of it. The roadblocks forcing Rick's group to feel the walls closing in. The whistling through the dark trees before a single word was spoken, making everyone kneel. The waiting, the jokes, the eeny meeny miny mo. Every second was deliberate psychological architecture. He wasn't choosing a victim. He was making Rick's group feel like children, like prey. Like the story they'd been telling themselves about who they were had just been proven completely wrong. Level 6 wasn't about 2 deaths. It was about the death of hope. The belief that the right people fighting for the right things would somehow be protected. Negan killed that belief, and he did it with a smile. But even this wasn't his most brutal act. Level 7. Breaking Rick. This is where everything gets reframed. Level 7 has almost nothing to do with violence. Think about who Rick was at this point. A man who had survived everything, fought the governor, built communities from nothing, made impossible choices, and kept moving forward. One of the most resilient human beings the show ever gave us. Negan knew that, which is exactly why he didn't try to break Rick with violence. He broke him with psychology. Hours in the RV, no physical torture, just Negan talking, controlling, reframing reality until Rick's sense of self started to crumble. And then the hatchet, telling Rick to cut off Carl's arm. And this wasn't about Carl's arm. Negan had no real intention of following through. This was about making Rick willing to do it, making a father raise a blade against his own child just to obey. The moment Rick broke down sobbing with that hatchet raised, that was Negan's masterpiece, not the lineup, that scene. But here's the twist nobody talks about. By reaching level 7, Negan didn't secure his power. He ended it. Because when you push someone like Rick past fear, past breaking, past the point of no return, you don't create a servant. You create someone with nothing left to lose. He lit a fuse that night he could never put out. Negan didn't become a monster overnight. 7 levels. 7 turns on a road that only went one direction. And the scariest part, every single step made sense in the moment. That's not a story about a villain. That's a story about a choice. And then another choice. Until the choices made the man. So tell me in the comments, which level was the point of no return? And the 7 levels of Rick's leadership is coming next. You already know what to do.